just want to read some of my notes that I wrote down from An Nisa, the 4th surah in the Quran. So this is for the first section, which is mostly property inheritance laws, and these are my notes that I've written. So Allah commands Muslims to honor the rights of women and orphans. They must manage the wealth of orphans responsibly and not steal from them, for their wealth must be returned when the time is appropriate. When married, women should be given their due rights, or dowry. Islam, unlike previous religions, puts limits on the number of wives one may take, 4. However, if you are unable to provide or maintain justice among them, it is unlawful and you must only take one wife. The rules of inheritance are covered in detail, and while the division may appear unequal by modern standards, it is worth remembering that the men were expected to provide for the women. Islam entitled women to inheritance, property in their own name, and dowry paid directly to them and not to their fathers. This was an enormous progress for women of the time, and women in the West would not enjoy some of these same rights for approximately 1,000 years. Islam is basically raising women up on a pedestal. So a lot of people come into my comments and they try and use verses, particularly from this surah, to dissuade me from reading and convince me that I shouldn't be learning about Islam, how awful Islam is to women, and you can beat your wife and you can do all of these things. And I think it's worth noting that, well, yes, there is a part in this surah that does mention disciplining your wife. That was also the norm up until the early 1900s in the West. So I don't think that is necessarily a religious thing, but more a cultural thing. And it's not a cultural thing specific to Muslim countries. Western countries also employed this practice until realistically not that long ago. So when reading the Quran, I think it's important to understand what things are specifically related to the religion, what things are cultural, what things are just a product of the time. A lot of people come in and talk about how Islam permits slavery and all of that kind of stuff. Well, slavery was permitted before Islam. In fact, slavery was in existence up until, again, modern history. But Islam constantly talks about freeing slaves. It's a good deed if you free slaves. So while slavery may have been part of life and the economy of the time, I think Islam really does try to encourage its followers not to participate in that, and it's a good deed to release a slave, to be a kind person. So I just wanted to share.